Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I, the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 3 for the Nintendo Switch. Or, for those of you who lived in Japan, this game is simply called Luigi Mansion 3, so I just want to let you guys know about that. So, last time, we somehow managed able to explore around the forms of the Last Resort Hotel. Like, it's all nice and everything, until we've realized about the fact that not only for the fact that we found our own room, and whilst we were trying to sleep on the actual bed, after hearing that particular Peach's scream, we do realize about the fact that the entire hotel has changed around a little bit. Or should I say, significant amount of changes because of all that haunted decorations has now appeared more often, and straight to the point, it is now nighttime. And not only that though, not only for the fact that Helen Gravely also decides to change personality as well, but as well as that though, unexpectedly, King Boo is back, so as a result, he wants revenge against with Luigi for the second time, and as a result, no matter what though, we can able to expect to realize this is going to be the third time to able to try taking care of the forms of King Boo, but that's not going to be until for later. So because of that, and along the way, for the fact that we actually did manage to able to go across into a couple of floors during the forms within the Last Resort Hotel, ranging from basement 1, as well as floor 1, floor 2, and that's as far as I can try to say about that. And along the way too is about the fact that we did manage to encounter the first few couple of ghosts, known as Goobs, so yeah, that's something worth noting for. And also around that time is about the fact that we also did manage to meet up with the familiar friend from the likes of in the previous two games, such as Professor Egad, and as a result, he got trapped inside the portrait painting, so we have no choice but able to try to find the Dark Light device to once again try to free something out of the actual portrait. So oh, yeah, I forgot about that particular elevator cutscene right there. So, anywho, in addition to that, we also did manage to face off against with the first boss in the game, which appears to be Stu Wood. So, yeah, that's as far as I was going to say about this, I guess. So, and after that, we somehow managed able to obtain not only one, but two elevator buttons, which appears to be not only one, but addition to 5 as well. So this means about the fact that we can now able to actually explore into other set of floors. So, likely, for instance, though, as you can tell, we're about to be inserting button number 1 right there, which obviously takes us into the grand lobby right there. And on top of that, we could also insert button number 5, so this means we can now able to proceed into something a little bit of a weird number order when it comes to floors we have to traverse into. So, but either way, as you can tell, we've now got 3 buttons to access to when it comes to hopping onto the elevator. So, I mean, this is only just the beginning, so yeah, that's quite a lot of explanation about the entire context of what happens in the last video. So, anywho, so speaking of which, is that today for this video, in particular though, is that we are about to be still trying to able to explore around the majority of the forms of the Last Resort Hotel by trying to go into not only, well, maybe floor 1, whilst ultimately though, I get the strong feeling we have to go into floor 5 from now on, because it may look like we do need able to try to find a briefcase for Professor Egad, as far as I'm aware, because, well, straight to the point though is about the fact that, again, much like the first game and the second game, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on exploration, and it was also very nice too. Thankfully, we don't have to rush things or anything else like that, unlike the second game, if you try to go for the best ranking. So, anyways though, so for now on though, let's go ahead and try to able to select, yeah, according to the forms of what Professor Egad is trying to say, we have to force to go on to, well, to be more accurate though, is about the fact that, oh yeah, we need to access the, virtual booth for a moment, so just in case the actual communication was working, in case about the forms the entire conversation is about to, like, well, you get the idea, similar to the previous two games, but only now, that Professor Egad looks a lot more redder if you're trying to, you know, activate the virtual booth. So, still it's pretty weird and odd at the same time. But regardless of such though, it's about the fact that yes, much like Luigi's Mansion 2 or Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, not able to actually access the pause menus by simply pressing plus buttons. So, yeah, that's something worth knowing for. So, anywho though, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about this is though, and that's what it appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 2nd of October today, in some cases in 2025 today, and recently today, not only that Super Mario Galaxy has come back for Nintendo Switch, but also for the very first time that Super Mario Galaxy 2 has finally received onto Nintendo Switch. Well, technically both Switch 1 and Switch 2 with some enhancements, and as far as I'm aware, for my first impressions about the forms of those two game collection compilation for both Super Mario Galaxy plus Super Mario Galaxy 2, I still really enjoy it, especially noticeable considering for the fact that obviously both Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2 are the most successful Mario games I've ever made. And it's especially noticeable considering for the fact that we can now play those two games on a go, well, twice in the forms within Super Mario Galaxy 1, mind you. Well, the only major difference is this time around though is that I do realize about the fact that upon playing through the forms of both of those games back to back on my, you know, Nintendo Switch, and as a result though, it does have some little amount of changes, well not all of them mind you, but most of them anyway. So, as you can see, we got ourselves our next gem in the forms within floor number 1. So, by doing so, it's about the fact that we can able to now learn the next ability, which appears to be the plunger suction, which basically though, in order to able to actually use that technique, is that you have to press the Y button, and as a result though, if you see that particular plunger hologram, that actually signifies you can able to actually try to shoot something. So because of that, once you're trying to shoot something specifically, like for example though, there are flower parts as you saw familiar, and there's also another one of those examples being likely for this part right there, and oh wait, that didn't work out. But either way, I suppose I'm also able to be back for that, I suppose. But anyway, also, we got ourselves a telephone call right there, which, as a result, yeah, it's basically unknown at this rate. So yeah, we'll have to able to figure something this out. And there's another gem right there, which we do need to figure something out. Until specifically for later. So for now on though, you can't able to actually try to like, oh yeah, just like the forms of how it does in the previous two games, you can able to actually suck up some projectile objects and use them to able to try to shoot at something. So yeah, that's nothing new or anything else like that. It might be feels a bit familiar to you if you ever played, you know, the previous two games already. So, but anyway, yeah, back to what I was saying about the forms of my first impressions about the forms of both Super Mario Galaxy 2025 edition and Super Mario Galaxy 2 for Nintendo Switch. That, like I said, I did have a great time playing those two games again, but only now for the fact that there are some slight differences, like for one noticeable thing, for the fact that obviously though, when you get to the file selection screen, if you couldn't tell, they somehow now finally redone the forms of choose your icon selection, because previously though, since in Super Mario 3D All-Stars version of Super Mario Galaxy, despite the fact that in that particular version it's basically like an emulation version of the original version of Super Mario Galaxy, but it's been upscaled into 1080p. Like for instance though, with the lack of Mii's will not be selectable in the actual file selection screen. So ultimately though, you're basically stuck with the forms of not only 4 icons, but 5 icons if you do manage to able to unlock Super Luigi Galaxy in Super Mario Galaxy 1. So no matter what though, I'm grateful to report for the fact that the actual icon selection screen on the file selection screen has finally been readjustment. So just in case it doesn't go completely out of place when it comes to likely for its empty slots or anything else like that. Like another one of those examples being is of course Super Mario Maker 2. Well, I first thought for the fact that the extra game style was going to be well, obviously though, we still got 5 game styles in Super Mario Maker 2, which is of course Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, New Super Mario Bros. U, and of course Super Mario 3D World, but no luck about the forms of the next new game style, which I was expecting with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, perhaps, but unfortunately though, it's already too late in regards to the forms of trying to add in some new updates for Super Mario Maker 2, which is kind of a shame, honestly, because that could have able to actually give us a huge potential for the sake of the forms of trying to add in a long live support when it comes to Super Mario Maker 2 before the next installment is going to be on its way specifically for Nintendo Switch 2, perhaps, with all the mouse controls and everything. But instead, we're able to actually get ourselves the, Mario Tennis FIFA for Nintendo Switch 2, alongside with the Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, plus meet up in Bella Bell Park, and on top of that, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. So, oh well, no big deal. There's always another time though, assuming of course they'll try to add in some more Nintendo Switch 2 editions in the near future. Like, for instance though, I'm almost expecting for the fact that maybe Pikmin 4 were able to actually get the Switch 2 edition, but again, it's a bit too early for saying about this for the sake of time right now, because obviously though, that next up, in turns the forms of, more announcements to come, and during at some point in 2026, we can able to expect to see, the 40th anniversary celebration coming up for The Legend of Zelda, alongside with Metroid, and on top of that, the 35th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog for the sake of the actual Sega property, and maybe potentially with the 25th anniversary of Super Monkey Ball Banana, well, to be more accurate though, Super Monkey Ball game series. Well, even then, no, that's as far as I can try to able to explain about that particular subject, I suppose. But anywho, and there's also reassuring about this too, both Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2 on Switch now actually has autosaving. Well, technically Super Mario Galaxy 2 already has autosaving feature since the original Wii version, but to be more specifically, the 2025 edition of Super Mario Galaxy now finally autosaves this time around, so you don't have to painstakingly try to able to keep on selecting which you want to save your game within yes or no. So no matter what though, I totally appreciate it for the fact that when it comes to modern Nintendo systems nowadays, now actually offers autosaving rather than just try to utilize the selecting the option between yes or no when it comes to saving your game. But that's besides the point. So anywho, so onwards back onto the familiar floor since the very beginning of the game. And by the way, every time when you enter in a new floor, you obviously get yourselves the actual cutscene when Luigi did somehow first approach into the actual floor. That technically we've already experienced floor 5 since the very beginning of the game already, but there are some slight differences this time around though, such as for instance though, I'm pretty sure that particular left side of the actual room, or the floor rather, has been blocked off, so we do need to figure something this out until we're able to actually access to the familiar rooms, not only for Luigi's room, but in addition to Mario's room and Princess Peach's room as well. So because of that though, speaking of Princess Peach though, about the fact that recently though, that Nintendo Music application has recently added in Princess Peach Showtime when it comes to the music selection, so bit of an odd choice to able to actually have that in there. Like, I've almost first thought they were trying to bring in Super Mario Sunshine soundtrack. Well, unfortunately though, it doesn't seem to be happening just yet. So, it takes a bit of time though to able to actually try to add in some music selections when it comes to Nintendo themed music. So, oh well though. So, anyway, and there's also I've somehow realized about something is about the fact that what if I do manage to able to lose a life for both Super Mario Galaxy or Super Mario Galaxy 2, the actual screen transition is also different too. Because normally in the original Wii version of Super Mario Galaxy, as well as Super Mario Galaxy 2, including the honorable mention Super Mario 3D All-Stars version of Galaxy 1, that it does show us a bit of a silhouette with Bowser's face on it. Every time when you get yourselves a too bad screen or anything else like that, or you lose a life. Well, apparently though, that's now been changed into fading to black, which I was like, okay, that's a little bit of an odd change right there. So, I digress. But I'm sure enough though, the control scheme for Super Mario Galaxy 2025 edition is basically identical to the 3D All-Stars version, but only now, for the fact that no matter what though, we can now able to actually have the, well, let's just say, for the sake of time, though, is about the fact that, like I said before, I'm only going to be playing through Super Mario Galaxy 2 throughout the majority of the Switch 1 version for the time being, just because, well, if you want to curious enough to able to actually want me to able to try to do not only the third time playing through Super Mario Galaxy with some changes for its Let's Play department, as well as Super Mario Galaxy 2 Switch 1 version, for the sake of the forms of a road to, you know, to try to celebrate the Super Mario Galaxy movie, well, let me know in the comments down below. So because of that, speaking of which though, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Out of all the actual 2 Mario Galaxy games on Switch right about now, which one of these games did you play first? Did you play Super Mario Galaxy, or did you play Super Mario Galaxy 2? Just because if you already got Super Mario Galaxy 1 thanks to the forms of the 3D All-Stars compilation, then I'm sure enough though is about the fact that a lot of players out there was already expecting to able to try to play through Super Mario Galaxy 2 instantly because of all that. Well, you get the idea. We can now able to actually try to utilize with the Switch Pro controller, or Joy-Cons if you will, just like the forms of the good old Wii days. And it's also reassuring about this too, about the fact that the actual the UI itself, when it comes to the world map in Super Mario Galaxy 2, also looks a bit slightly different too. Like, if you don't know what I mean, but the fact that with that particular star sprite, if you try to look for the actual stages you've already visited into, apparently though, the star sprites on the actual user interface is exactly directly ripped right out of the forms of the first game, Super Mario Galaxy, which I was like, I've almost first thought they're trying to go for that particular familiar UI sprite for the likes of the original version of Super Mario Galaxy 2, but in upscaled. But apparently though, that's not the case, which I was like, okay, this is rather odd. So, anywho. So, but regardless of such though, what I've noticed is that the reviews has already been up, and so far so good, it's actually doing rather well. In terms of the forms of the review scores, in terms of both Super Mario Galaxy plus Super Mario Galaxy 2 on Switch 1. So as a result, yeah, nothing negative around it. Well, I suppose the only drawback I can probably think about is the ridiculous price tag, which that's the only complaint I have with it though. But apart from those aside things though, luckily those 2 games still runs very smoothly within 60 frames per second, even though it sometimes drops a little bit. But regardless of such though, it's a fantastic package, at least in my opinion, especially because, you know, I'm a Mario enthusiast, and that's also the reason why that I'm no longer trying to able to actually decide to able to play through Pikmin games again, just because, well, I have no interest in playing them. I mean, sure, it's kind of interesting to experience at first, but it's just that I'm not very great at those games, I must admit, because of all that tactical combat skills I wasn't overly keen on. And on top of all that stuff though, every single games within the Pikmin games in mind all run at 30 FPS, which honestly to me though, with 1+2 doesn't make sense when it comes to frame rate, because I almost first thought they're trying to run those 2 games brilliantly when it comes to 60 frames per second. Although, ultimately though, they are still basically stuck on 30 FPS, which I was like, that's disappointing. Especially because, you know, unlike something like, you know, Skyward Sword HD for the Switch, at least that game runs beautifully within 60 frames per second, and then meanwhile for Metroid Prime Remastered also runs very well within 60 frames per second, and same applies with the forms of, let's just say on the Switch 2 version, or should I say, Bowser's Fury on Switch 2, thanks to the Monster 3 patch update. At the very least, if you try to play the game on handheld mode, it runs beautifully this time around within 60 frames per second, along with 1080p support. So, yeah, it's very top notch, all things considered. So, but anyway. And what I also found is very odd is about the fact that if you do manage to able to get into the icon selection screen on the file selection in Super Mario Galaxy 2 on Switch, you do realize that unlike the original Wii version of Super Mario Galaxy 2, that when you start the game off, you're able to actually only try to select 6 icons from the start, like, you know, with Mario, Luigi, Yoshi, Toad, Peach, and Luma, and then eventually when you do manage to complete the perfect run in Grandmaster Galaxy, you were able to actually unlock the 7th icon featuring Rosalina. Well, apparently, Rosalina icon was now appeared from the start, for the sake of defaults the Switch version of Super Mario Galaxy 2, which, yeah, that's very unexpected, because I almost first thought we do need to unlock it again, just like the forms of how it does it both on the Wii or the Wii U version, depending on about the fact if you do manage to get those 2 games on, not only physical version on you know, the original Wii version, or if you get the games digitally back then, during the phones been sometime in 2015, if I can recall. So, but still, no wonder why I somehow managed able to skip over the Wii U downloadable versions with Super Mario Galaxy plus Super Mario Galaxy 2 back then, because I already got them. Plus, not only that though, it's a shame that you can't take your Wii U gamepad anywhere else, because unlike the Nintendo Switch, and nowadays with Nintendo Switch 2, thankfully you can able to take those games on the go. So at the very least, that's the main selling point when it comes to, you know, Nintendo's part, which I honestly do fully appreciate it. So, but that's just me, because even then, no wonder why the Wii U itself was a failure, much like the evolves of how it does it for Nintendo Virtual Boy, and that's besides the point. So, anywho, also, another thing too, The Simpsons movie is getting a sequel at long last, which that took them long enough as I expected, because I obviously still really enjoy the first Simpsons movie, of course. Definitely, without a doubt, is one of my favorite films of all time, next to the films of any other films for the time, such as, of course, not only the original version of The Lion King, and on top of that, Tarzan, and etc, which, in fact, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day as well. Do you guys want me to suggest me to able to actually talk about my top 10 favorite films I've ever seen in my whole entire life? Let me know in the comments down below of what you guys think about it. So, because of that, though, maybe we'll try and plan that at some point, but ultimately, though, for right now, though, we are most likely still focusing on 2 games at a time still, such as, of course, Luigi's Mansion 3, and of course, My Little Pony Rainbow Runners, thanks to both Bugs Bunny and Lola Bunny simultaneously. So, but anyway, so that pretty much taking care of the forms those peculiar Goop Ghost familiar, so either way. Oh, and by the way, if you find yourself getting lost and during the forms of some progression in this game so far, EGADs will always try to tell you where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. So because of that, although ultimately though, I just like to do a lot of exploration for the time being, because there's a gold badge right there. So that way, I can able to actually guarantee to get not only more coins, but in addition to more gold bars and more money notes as well. So that's actually pretty swell on my ad. So, it's actually ridiculously easy to get a lot of money in this game, much like the evolves of how it does in the previous 2 games, that's for sure. Assuming, of course, if you know exactly what you're supposed to try to find, enjoying the evolves in certain aspects when it comes to doing a lot of emphasis on exploration, so. But either way. Oh yeah, as I was saying about the forms of how the fact that I'm so incredibly excited, but also a little bit skeptical at first when it comes to the forms of the existence of The Simpsons movie 2, which as a result, apparently though, that film is also going to be releasing until in 2027, just like the forms of any other films during that time, like Sonic the Hedgehog 4, The Legend of Zelda movie, alongside with Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, and on top of that, Avengers Secret Wars, and on top of all that stuff though, just any other films we don't even know about just yet. Oh, also with the films of Shrek 5 and Ice Age Boiling Point, but either way. Aside from all that stuff though, it's about the fact, I get the gut feeling that 2027 is gonna be jam-packed full of content, not just by the films of, maybe some occasional video games here and there, but most of the time when it comes to the films department, that's where things get a bit more interesting when it comes to hype and everything, so, which I honestly fully appreciate, because it's been like, what, 20 or 18 or so years since the actual sequel of The Simpsons movie has finally got announced, after so many of those rumors and conversations during the forms of in one of the episodes during that time, thanks to the forms of the comic book guy, and so much to the point for the fact that, well, it is finally happening. So as a result, and as far as I'm aware, the release date for the film is going to be confirmed to be releasing until, once again, in summer, just like the films of how it does on the first one, but only now it's going to be releasing until 2027. To be more specifically, 23rd of July in 2027. So as a result, we just literally got about 2 years left until the actual film itself is releasing. So yeah, that's pretty top notch, all things considered. In fact, also let me know in the comments down below what you think about the films that film you were expected to see coming. So
Huh?
Anyway, so as you can tell, we somehow meet up with the forms of another boss that we have to take care of, and as you can tell, she basically stole the forms of Professor Regat's briefcase. So because of that, we have to retrieve it. But before we do that though, let me quickly check what's beyond in this particular balcony thing right there. Not only for the fact that we can able to once again try to use the strobe bulb right at the forms of those plants, just like the forms of how it does on the second game, to potentially try to reveal something like more money and everything. But if we check on that particular telescope right there, as you can tell, the view looks pretty interesting, despite how low polygons was actually going on down there. And oh my lord, what the heck is up with this particular ghost? Which, as you can tell, these ghosts are kind of odd-looking, and it does have its name, by the way, which appears to be called Jewelretisto. I think is what it says anyway. Again, I do apologize for that particular botched little language there for that particular ghost name as far as I'm aware. But yeah, if you do manage to defeat those types of ghosts, you're able to actually get one of the gems. So as a result, if you do manage to deal with them, then you should keep the gem forever. So that's pretty nice, all things considered. And also, much like the forms of how it does on the second game, that if you do manage to obtain a gem, assuming of course about the fact that unlike the second game though, you have to complete the mission in order able to actually keep the gem forever. Whilst in here though, you can just simply keep the gem at all times. So as a result, no need to able to retry the entire thing all over again after doing so. So anyway, also we got another call from Professor Regat right there. So anyway, but at the very least, unlike the actual Virtual Boy, thankfully we don't have to worry about just trying to hold the controller and wear the stupid little Virtual Boy itself at the same time while using it, because even then, no wonder why that the Virtual Boy itself is a massive failure, which you get the idea for that point. So, anywho though, yeah, that's all I can really say about this, I guess. Oh, there's also another thing else I want to point out. Yes, like I said before, since in yesterday, this game does indeed have DLC, and as a result, it needs to be paid, by the way, in order to able to actually access to every single DLC for this particular game. And as a result, it's only utilized in multiplayer. So as a result, no flaws added or anything else like that in a story mode. So it's all about multiplayer stuff, basically. And basically, what I've noticed is that the entire DLC lineup did manage to came out during the forms of well, in 2020, in some cases the lockdown year. So because of that though, and each DLC does come with the forms of, well, let's just say part 1, but as well as part 2, in terms of the forms of content you'll be getting, such as, for instance though, new minigames, and in addition to more skyscraper outfits for the sake of the forms of, you know, customizations as far as I'm aware. And on top of that, 6 new themed ghosts will attempt to appear in the new floors and during the forms of in skyscraper mode. Because yes, this game in particular, oh jeez, there are even more goobs, but now for the fact that some of them actually has some bit of costumes on them, so yeah, I suppose we have to take care of them first before we're able to stop that particular ghost that it did somehow stole the actual briefcase from that Professor Regat. So yeah, we definitely need to retrieve that briefcase back. So anyway, you get the drill about the fact that, gee, no wonder why, for the fact that every single ghost these days in this game in particular now has more HP as opposed to a little amount. So, but either way. So anyway, that pretty much does it from there. So now let's go ahead and leave this room, and as a result, we can now able to try to go after one of those pesky ghosts that does manage to steal the briefcase. So anyway, for part 1, when it comes to DLC content you're able to be getting, which appears to be 3 new minigames for multiplayer in Screen Park, which does include Dodge, Brawl, and Riverbank, and Tricky Ghost Hunts. So yeah, that's about it. And when it comes to 3 new skyscraper outfits for Luigi, based on a knight, a mummy, and a disco-styled outfit, named the Green Knight, Mummy and Groovy Luigi, so respectively. So that's interesting. And there's also 3 new skyscraper floor themes for the skyscraper, inspired by certain stages, which I'm probably not going to discuss upon it right about now, until whenever we proceed into the next couple of floors in this game. So, and there's also 6 new themed ghosts that appear on these new floors in Skyscraper mode. And it does look pretty cool though, with these different costumes you can able to actually wear from, much like the defaults of how it does it for Super Mario Odyssey in some respects. So, anyways, here's the defaults of the next boss right here, despite the fact that we've already taken care of her, let's just say twice so far, and as a result that she does have, let's just say, well, kind of thinking about it though, I wasn't exactly paying attention to the forms of any other aspects in particular, because even then I just somehow got distracted by how I was pretty much amazed about the forms of how the Simpsons movie sequel is finally happening. And in fact, no matter what though, with that particular teaser image, they did say that, with the actual caption anyway, which appears to be, but in fact it did say, Homer's coming back for seconds, and as a result, you see that familiar donut, and this time around though, rather than just having ourselves a very simple sprinkles on top, the actual sprinkles themselves is just shaped like a 2, which means that the second The Simpsons movie is upon us. So yeah, that seems pretty awesome in my book, and on top of that, they may look like that hand looks a bit familiar, which is of course, you know exactly what I mean, Homer's hand is still a thing, so either way. So yeah, that pretty much taking care of the this ghost right there, and her name was Chambrilla, which as a result, yeah, that's as far as I can try to say about that particular name of this ghost basically. So now we've actually taken care of her, so now let's go ahead and retrieve ourselves the actual briefcase for Professor Regad. So, and hopefully, I get the feeling we need to head back into his lab while carrying the phones to the briefcase. So, yeah, everything else checks out there basically, so yeah, we can't use the plunger for that.
Yeah. Ho ho. Nice. Hello? Whoa. Got it. Yeah. Luigi. Oh yeah.
And in addition to a briefcase for Professor Regad, we also now got elevator button number 3. So this means we can now able to actually access the next floor that we haven't exactly explored into yet. But of course, first things first though, we do need able to return that briefcase back to Regad first, until we've realized about the fact that there's going to be something new we can able to actually come across into ourselves into. So yeah, this is going to be fun. So anyway, let's go ahead and use the elevator once again. So just in case, not only we can now able to insert the next button on the actual elevator buttons, or the lift buttons I should say, but also, like I said earlier, we're just about to be going back into basement 1. So as a result, that way we can able to tell for the fact of what several things we can do next. So, but anyway, when it comes to the forms of Chambrilla, she does have 180 HP, by the way, so, yeah, I just want to classify for something for this happens to be. So, anyway. Oh, and what's also very odd about this, too, is about the fact that out of nowhere, unfortunately, though, one of those Pac-Man games in particular, which appears to be Pac-Man Megatonal Battle Chomp Champs, unfortunately, though, that game is going to be delisted soon, and not only that, that game is not going to be playable until specifically by the end of the year in 2025. And I was like, oh boy, it's like Pac-Man 99 all over again. But only this time around though is about the fact that it's only lasted for about a year or so, which as a result, not too surprising for the sake of defaults that particular, well, several of those online services kind of games like this will not last forever, unfortunately. So because of that though, which again, we'll talk more about that later, because even then we somehow return back onto the lab right there, and straight to the point for the fact that we can now able to actually deal with even more features that we haven't exactly come across into yet. So, yeah, this is going to be pretty exciting. So, anywho though, also, for the fact that no matter what though, is about the fact that when it comes to, both Super Mario Galaxy 2025 edition plus Super Mario Galaxy 2, obviously though, that if your gyro is a bit messed up, then once again, pressing the R button is essential when it comes to likely trying to recenter your, sensor thing with the actual star sensor if you're trying to grab star bits and all that, which I still honestly fully appreciate about this particular feature, despite how finicky it was at first. But, I mean, relatively speaking of, from what I can tell, there's been about, I would say it's been like 3 years ago since I actually have last fully completed Super Mario Galaxy thanks to the Forms of the 3D All-Stars compilation, so that's sure it's something. So, oh, and also another thing, I've recently just somehow managed to go back into Sonic Dash, I believe, which, as far as I'm aware, I did manage to able to really want to try to unlock Phantom Rider, which as a result, yeah, luckily though that the Phantom Rider is actually one of the epic categories, so yeah, it's not too shabby for the most part, so
Howie. But I.
Luigi.
okay, so apparently we somehow got trapped in the actual specific cage. Although, that's the reason for this, is because, if you couldn't tell, that very peculiar green goop thing just somehow now got inserted into the actual Poltergust G-00. This means this is where we come across into ourselves the main selling point of this game, and that's what appears to be the introduction to Luigi, which as a result is almost like a gooey version of Luigi, and to activate is about the fact you need to press the right stick button in order able to actually activate Luigi out of the actual container of your Poltergust G-100. So because of that, and then while you're at it, not only for the fact you can able to actually take control of the forms of Luigi, as you can tell from that particular units of health, that he does have like 25 HP compared to the forms of how it does it for a maximum 99 for the likes of Luigi. And as you can see, Luigi can indeed manage to able to go and clip through the actual cage, as you can see right there, along with any other fences as well, which certainly comes in handy, especially noticeable in some puzzles later on, that you do need to incorporate the forms of not only Luigi, but also Luigi at the same time. And what's also very odd about this is that Luigi does not like water, so every time when you touch the water, or even get affected by the water, he'll just die instantly. So because of that though, luckily he does manage to respawn back to its full health after getting touched by the water by, you know, clicking the right stick button. So as a result, and from here, all you have to really do is just try to release Luigi out of the bones of the cage, and then if you want to switch back, then obviously though we have to press the right analog stick button again, so that way we can able to do some constant switching. Or alternatively though, is about the fact that this game does heavily encourages you to do some bit of two-player cooperative aspects, which, for those of you unaware, that back in 2018, that there's a game which appears to be Luigi's Mansion as a remake for the Nintendo 3DS, which not only brings us some interesting changes for that particular version, but also has an interesting character first appearance of the forms of Luigi, all thanks to the forms of the time paradox shenanigans with the future version of Professor Egad based off from Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon or Luigi's Mansion 2. And what this happens is that I'm pretty sure it was right after you somehow explored in the actual Hall of Fame gallery section in the first game on the 3DS version as a remake, and after that particular conversation with the past version of Professor Egad, unexpectedly with that particular, you know, the monitor, that the future version of Professor Egad gives us a call, and what happens was he sent us a very strange gooey object, which appears to be known as Luigi, which functions pretty much as just a second player for the sake of the forms of trying to explore around and work together. And no matter what though, for the fact that I was expected to try to able to actually get into the 3DS version of Luigi's Mansion as a remake, but ultimately though, I just found it to be kind of feels a bit convoluted with all that control schemes. And not only that though, for what I've heard, the frame rate on multiplayer in Luigi's Mansion 1 on the 3DS remake, it just looks very sluggish in multiplayer co-op aspects, because not only because it chucks the frame rate up, but as well as that though, is about the fact you do need to require, you know, the 3DS in order to able to experience co-op, which as a result, no wonder why it makes no sense to me back then whenever they do manage to able to release Luigi's Mansion 1 on the 3DS, not on the Switch by the way. Well, it wasn't until specifically that now that we are finally going to be getting the classic GameCube games onto the Nintendo Switch 2 online services, despite with the lack of new features that what the 3DS version does have. So, but anyway, so as you can see, we somehow now managed able to clip through, or try to go through, that particular fence as Luigi by simply trying to get the next gem on the first basement floor. So because of that, yeah, everything else checks out there. And of course, Luigi's moveset plays pretty similar to regular Luigi, but only now for the fact that obviously though you can now able to actually go through, you know, fences and stuff like that, unlike regular Luigi, that basically though he could not go through these little fences. So, but if you do want to able to play as Luigi by himself, you have to simply just try to press the right analog stick button twice, and then that way you would able to go back on taking, you know, try and take control of Luigi. So, yeah, everything else checks out there basically. So, but anyway, let's continue things on for this point right about now. So I suppose we are essentially done with this for the most part. Well, apart from the fact that there might be some other gems I was missing. In fact, let me just go ahead and quickly go for this particular room right there. And as a matter of fact, I suppose we can now able to actually try to use the plunger thing right at the falls of that particular little bit of a some sort of like a I don't know what you call it per se, because it has been quite a while since I actually have last played this, just because, you know, I've been busy playing through Super Mario Galaxy 2 on my Switch, so that means I can finally play my favorite game of all time on the go and on the fly, despite there are some slight issues with it, like for instance though, the loading times might be a little bit longer in comparison to the defaults of how it does on the original Wii version. Although I don't know if it's just me, but I'm pretty sure enough though it takes a bit of a while to get used to with all that loading transitions, so despite the fact it was on a game card after all, for God's sake. I mean, anywho, so let's just go through that particular section right there and try to use Luigi by trying to slip through that particular little thing right there and to get ourselves our next gem. So, huzzah. And in fact though, I believe we've got about, let's just say we've got about 2 gems left. So, but if I do ended up missing some amount of gems, then I can easily just able to look it up on my spare own time. So, just in case about the fact if I do lost track, then obviously about the fact I can able to, well, you get the idea. So anyway, that pretty much does it for the some of these floors for now. And let's go ahead and jump straight into the next floor, which is going to be taking place in floor number 3. So, suffice to say though, I'm pretty sure this floor is going to be filled to the brim with these little shops and all that stuff, which it can be quite fun to explore around in. So I'm sure enough though, it's going to be quite surprising, so... And remember what I said earlier for the fact that Luigi is the main selling point when it comes to Luigi's Mansion 3. The actual box art itself, when it comes to Luigi's Mansion 3, it does shows us not only Luigi on the bottom part of the actual box art on the front cover, but also Luigi at the top, which I suppose that makes it pretty obvious about the fact that, like I said before, this game does encourage you to able to do some bit of cooperative aspects, much like defaults of how it does on Luigi's Mansion as a remake for the 3DS. Mind you, that I will say that cooperative aspect in this game plays a lot more funner to me compared to the forms of how it does on the 3DS version of Luigi's Mansion 1, but that's just me because you know with the frame rate and everything. And what's also very odd about it too is about the fact that that Poultry Pop also appears as a brief appearance when it comes to Luigi's Mansion 3DS remake as well, but ultimately though for the fact that, well, obviously though just bring you back to life basically if you do have the golden bone, similar to the forms of how it does it for, well, Luigi's Mansion 2. So, yeah, you get the idea for that point. So, anywho though, and also, as far as I'm aware, back into what I was saying about the forms of this whole closure thing for the likes of the forms of that particular game I was talking about earlier, which is of course Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle Jump Champs. That in terms of the forms of this game is going to be delisting. It's probably going to be delisted at some point in November the 1st in 2025. So as a result, it's going to be divided into two parts. So the first part of the process happens on 1st of November 2025, where on that date, the game will be removed from sale from not only from Nintendo eShop, but in addition to PlayStation Store and in addition to Microsoft Store as well. And not just that, however, though, until specifically in by the end of 2025, exactly by the end of 2025, on December 31st, well, obviously that game in particular will no longer be playable, which as a result is going to be a pretty similar situation as the forms of not only Super Mario Bros. 35 back in 2020, and on top of that, also same applies with Pac-Man 99. So as a result, we're about to be losing quite a number of things in terms of the forms of online games experience, all things considered, with all that, you know, non-existent for the sake of the forms of the shop applications digitally, and not to mention though with the forms of being playable throughout. So yeah, it's gonna be quite sad. Oh yeah, let's talk about this actually. In terms of the forms of those specific boss ghosts in particular, unlike the forms of how it does on the second game, where basically though we always have to face off against with the exact same kind of ghost type for about 5 times, as far as I'm aware, with all these like, you know, horns shown up. Well, I'm very grateful for the fact that those any other boss ghosts are pretty much different in every way. So because of that, yeah, let's go ahead and pull this little vending machine down, so just in case we can able to actually get... Oh, there's nothing on here, so I suppose we'll be back for that eventually. So yeah, either way. Well, mind you though, for the fact that again, if I do end up missing a couple of those gems, then let me know, especially because again, it's been a very long while since I actually have last played this. So anyway, so here's the main emphasis about the forms of the third floor, by the way. And obviously though, it does have not 1, but 4 different stores to explore into. So, and again, this is what Luigi decides to come to play. Especially because, as you can tell, we can't enter in the actual shops as Luigi by himself. So, again, summoning the actual Luigi to potentially try to open up certain cash points for the till machine with the forms of one of those shape-specific keys. And yeah, fundamentally speaking though, we're about to be getting some keys that represent 4 different suits, like, you know, spade, heart, and diamond, and on top of that, club. So, like, 4 suits, basically. Like, I keep on thinking about the forms of Fortune Street, or Boom Street if you will, but along the way though, if you think you're about to be trying to get the key, well obviously though, we have to take care of the forms of ghost encounters like Goobs again, so, but eventually at some point we will come across into other variations of the exact same types of ghosts, but also we can able to come across into different kinds of ghosts, you know, as well, much like the forms of how it does on the first game and the second game, so yeah, there's gonna be a lot of similarities when it comes to any other Luigi's Mansion games for what I've noticed. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get ourselves the heart key, so that way we can now able to actually open up the next cash point or the till machine for trying to explore around in the heart shop. But before we do that, let's smash that glass to reveal the first gem in the 3rd floor. So, yeah, pretty easy to find, especially because in order to break the glass, you have to try to able to utilize the plunger thing right at the actual suitcase, and as a result, if you smash that glass, you should able to get that gem no problem. So, yeah, everything else checks out there. I'm afraid to tell you, I don't think it's possible we can able to go for this entire room for this part, but until tomorrow, I will do. So with that being said, folks, we should probably endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 3. It's that we're about to be continuing exploring through floor 3, and hopefully though we can able to get ourselves the next elevator button, which as far as I'm aware is going to be, I would say, button number 2 perhaps? I'm not entirely sure, so I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later fellas.